And today's October 31st. Lots of different opinions on today. I know it has some, is nefarious the right word, origins, and I get that, and I get a lot of the concern. You want my opinion? I guess it doesn't matter. I have the mic. I'll give you my opinion. I believe God doesn't cause everything. Scripture's really clear. There's lots of forces at play, the world, the flesh, the devil. I think there's lots going on. The one thing is clear is God redeems and restores all. And so while today is a day that has, I would say, nefarious origins, somehow Jesus has flipped that, and this is the day where you'll probably encounter potentially more neighbors than you would throughout any other time of the year. And so I say, smile, be generous, take the opportunity. They're actually gonna open the door, and I just use this opportunity to get to know my neighbors. So God redeems it all, and I love that. You have a different opinion? That's okay. Hey, we're all welcome to that. Downtown, you're joining us too today. It's great to have you join us, and online, and those of you in the room. We're continuing on Unexpected Jesus. I'm super pumped about it. Can I just read you the story? You know, in Bible college, when you're taking the preaching class, like you need a hook, you need to like catch your audience and like interest them with something. I'm like, let me just read you this Jesus story because it's interesting and uncomfortable and confusing. And if this doesn't hook you, then, I mean, there's no point in paying attention to anything else I say today because we're just gonna unpack all of this. But let me just read it for you. Luke chapter 8, verse 26. We're gonna be covering that today. And so just give you a second to get there and then we'll jump right into it, okay? Okay, front row, always keen. Thank you. And just to give you some context, this is a story that has a theme where there is some sort of massive fear, and then Jesus' power comes in the middle of it. In fact, literally the story right after the text that Robin covered last week, there's a little short story that we preached on a few months ago. We're not gonna cover it today, but it's this massive storm. Everyone's absolutely terrified they're gonna drown and die. And then Jesus, because he's just napping in the middle of it, wakes up and calms the storm, which is so epic because in the ancient world, that wasn't just a storm that you could look up on your phone and see, okay, it's rated this much hurricane or whatever. It was like in their minds, everything unexplainable in the world was out at sea. It was the unknown. So it had all this these spiritual connotations. So for Jesus to show up and to control the sea, everyone's like, whoa, right? So that's what it's coming out of. And then we pick up this story. So they're ending their little journey and this is where they land, okay? So let me just read it for you, follow along, okay? They sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. They've never been there before. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by, not the welcoming committee, a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and been driven out by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, "What's your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. If it's not weird enough as it is, here we go. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went to the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who'd seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were so overcome with fear. So Jesus got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's get going. First, it says this: they sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. Okay, so you need to understand this region is mostly thought to be a non-Jewish area. It's a Gentile area. Okay, so already there's a problem because Jesus' disciples are all these good little Jewish boys. And these Jewish boys have all these Jewish rules about cleanliness and morality and all this stuff. And Jesus is like, field trip. It's like, well, where are we going? And it's like, well, first there's gonna be this epic storm, take a nap and then save your lives. It's gonna be amazing. And then we're gonna go somewhere that you've probably never been before. We're gonna go to Gentile land. And of course, it's not just any Gentile land. Of course, they get like uncleanville on steroids is what they show up to, okay? There's Gentiles, there's pigs. For Jewish people who don't eat pork, it's like pigs? They have pigs here? Like there's no farms with pigs back in their land. There's pigs here. There's demons, again, for Jews, like stay away. That's unclean. There are tombs. There were so many rules about how to handle dead bodies for the Jews, okay? This is the type of field trip you're gonna get home and not tell your parents about. That's what's going on here. That's just the first verse. Verse 27, when Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. This man embodies all of the uncleanliness for these people, okay? And oh, by the way, he's naked, which for any of us would be awkward. For the Jews, this was way more awkward because in their history, they remembered the story of Noah and the one son who had not treated nakedness with respect. The other sons, like they didn't want to look, but they're like, this is serious, like we can't. So they're like, oh my goodness, where are we? The welcoming committee. Okay, keep eye contact, don't look, right? Like just like put yourself in this situation and realize like how uncomfortable and awkward, and it's like, and does anyone else know that we're here? And why did Jesus bring us here? Like, it's intense. This is a baptism by fire. It's like they saw the beach from a distance and they're like, yay! And then they saw what was at the beach and now they just want to get back in the boat and run away. And then, this is the response. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Which remember Robin explained to us the way people viewed demonic power and spiritual power was if you could name someone and something, you had authority over it. So while it sounds like the demon is actually praising Jesus, Son of the Most High God, it's like, actually, I know who you are, and I'm flexing right now, and I'm trying to show you the power that I have. And yet in the same breath, look what else the demon-possessed man says to Jesus, I beg you, don't torture me. I beg you, don't torture me. It's fascinating. It's like, I'm trying to win, but I'm also realizing right away how powerful you are. And I'm like, please don't torture me. Please don't torture me. Which is just so fascinating. I think you should highlight this. Never caught my attention before, but this is the first and last person ever in the history of the Jesus story to beg Jesus to not torture them. Everybody else encounters Jesus. It's like, Jesus, touch me. Jesus, heal me. Come on, some more food, another miracle. Can you explain that parable? That was so amazing, right? Like everybody loves Jesus. The demon-possessed person's like, don't torture me. It's like, what? Why? Like, what is it about Jesus that you think he's in the torturing business? And here's how I would summarize this. Demonic power is so disorienting. The goodness of God seems threatening. God incarnate, God in a bod, love incarnate is in their presence. And the only thing they can think of is, don't torture us. Don't torture us. The story continues. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him. The demonic spirit had seized this man, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Like, this feels like a 1970s Hollywood horror film. Like, let's just be honest. You have so many questions, especially like, you're like, hey, my friend invited me to this church, it's my first week, and they're like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know we were talking about demons today, right? Like, it's like, this is a lot, right? This guy's like overpowered by the demonic, he's breaking chains, they try and guard him, he's breaking out. Like, this is a lot, and if you wanna learn about the demonic, let me just tell you, I can't cover it all in the next 23 minutes. Okay, like textbooks have been written on this topic. If you want to learn more, I don't recommend Googling. That'll end you up in some strange places. But there's a lot of great books. In fact, we'll put out some resources later in the week. But one book that I highly recommend is probably the person who because I know this author personally, his name's John Thompson. He's actually a local Canadian, probably one of the greatest voices on this topic. And he has a new book called Deliverance by John Thompson. Highly recommend it. I haven't read it. I've sat under his teachings for years. I have so many notes from him. I could probably write a book on it. And he's taken all that and actually put it in a book to be accessible to so many more people. So I recommend that. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can do some deep dives there. But today, we're not going to try and cover the entire demonic realm and the realm of darkness or anything like that. But let me just say this in response to what we're seeing in this wild description. Physical manifestations of the demonic are a thing. This does happen, but they're not the main thing. I remind people all the time, because people are drawn to exorcist movies and green goblins and horns and tails and pitchforks and all that. And I'm like, Jesus described exactly what the devil was like. He gave us the best picture probably in the book of John, chapter 8, verse 44. And I just want to read you a section of that verse if we can. This is what Jesus says about the devil. He's a murderer from the beginning. So first of all, he's a murderer. Destruction is his business. He's a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there's no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he's a liar and the father of lies. A murderer and a liar. Here's how I love one author summarized it. His goal is destruction. His tool is deception. His goal is destruction. His tool is deception. Deception, lies. I know some of that doesn't sound threatening. We actually unpacked that a few months ago in a sermon on June 6th called Chatting with the Devil. And we unpacked the power of lies. But really, I don't even know if you need to go back. Can we all just agree? In this day and age, you don't even need a sermon example to make the point that misinformation is very dangerous. Misinformation is very dangerous. And Jesus tells us there's an invisible realm of darkness whose goal is destruction and whose main weapon is deception. Why does this matter? Because it's easy to read this story and be like, not naked, didn't sleep in the tombs last night, don't have a demon. And it's like, no. That is one manifestation, but it is not the only manifestation of demonic work in our lives. And we're going to discover in a second what it is. But destruction, deception mean that there's demonic influence. This man's life is being destroyed by the demonic. His in a very visible way. Don't miss this though. If you retold the story today at lunch and someone said, can you just summarize, I wasn't there, but can you summarize the story? Here's the points you'd probably hit. You'd probably say, there's a demonized man, he was naked, he was super strong, and he slept in the tombs. The only thing that's interesting is that's all true and it's all in the text, but there's only one thing that is explicitly in the text said to have been done by the demon itself. And do you know what that was? Let me go back to that verse here. It says, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Isolation was what the devil was really doing in this play. You see, we worry about big sins, sexual, moral, drugs, people having affairs. We should be worried about all those things. They're all destructive. That's totally fair. But when the devil's working full steam, isolation is one of his tactics. The devil is all about destroying community. You ever been isolated? It's kind of a strange question to ask after a pandemic or in the middle of a pandemic. It was fascinating to me that after a couple of weeks, even the introverts were losing their minds, right? Like I don't know how many times I heard introverts be like, I normally can't stand people, but I need people. Right? Like whether you get your energy from groups of people or not, kind of the difference between introverts and extroverts, where you find your energy, the thing that all humans have in common is we are made for community. I'm absolutely convinced it's because we're created in the image of God, and God, for all of time, has been a God in community. The Christian God is a God in community. The Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, forever, eternally in relationship. And out of that relationship, the world was created, and we were created in that image, in that likeness. It's the reason why I touch a hot stove and I never touch it again, because my body has a way of learning from mistakes. But in relationship, I can get burned a dozen times and there's something still in the core of my being that needs to be in relationship. It's the image of God imprinted on our lives. I'm convinced if we were simply products of evolution and mistakes, we would have evolved our way of needing relationship. It's in us. Now, I'm not saying that anytime you find yourself in isolation, the devil's at work. I'm not saying COVID-19 is the work of the devil. Please don't write me those emails. It's way more nuanced than that. But I am saying one of the devil's tools is to destroy community through isolation. That is clear from this story. We worship a God who has always been in community, and humanity suffers when we are isolated. Can I just pause here? You know, as things start to reopen up and you start to re-engage at your comfort level, and I love that Trifina called, and welcomed our online community. We love you so much. We're so glad you're a part of us. So many of you have actually been joining groups virtually or starting to meet outdoors or in homes in different ways. And so we love that. If you've never been connected in a group, you can stop by guest services. If you're downtown, talk to Daniel. If you're online, you can shoot us a message. We would love to help you get connected into a group. There's different types of groups. They study different things. They watch videos. They have questions, all different things, but the biggest thing and the most important thing, the checkpoint for me is people get together, because community is us living in the image of God. And so I'd encourage that. Another way you can do that is by serving on a team. Get connected with other people. You serve shoulder to shoulder. It's something beautiful. Some of my greatest relationships were serving alongside people. Some of you in the midst of the isolation of COVID-19 have bumped up against old habits or started new habits that are unhealthy, patterns and behaviors and addictions. We have this incredible community that's met for decades here called Celebrate Recovery for hurts, hang-ups, and habits. If that's something you'd like more information on, you can go on our website, reach out to Johanna, our pastor of Celebrate Recovery, or you can stop by guest services or talk to Johanna downtown. She actually attends downtown, so I think Johanna will actually be there today. And so reach out. And if in the isolation you've just experienced grief and loss, you went into the pandemic as a couple and now you're alone, Grief Walk. You can find more information on our website or at guest services, but Grief Walk's this incredible community that brings together people who are grieving to grow together, to support each other, to love on each other. And so those are incredible ways to fight back isolation. I encourage that. But let's end that tangent and let's go back to the story, because there's just so much more, okay? Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. Okay, now that sounds like nice, like Legion. Okay, you have to understand, in that day and age, Legion had a meaning. Legion was the way to describe a number of soldiers in a Roman army, and a legion was 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers. And so when he's like, "What's your name?" It's like Legion, because there's many of us. It's like, that's not 2 or 3. Whether it's 5 or 6,000, or it's just meant to say thousands, there's a lot of demons inside this man. This man is carrying a big weight. And the feeling from Jesus' disciples would be, uh-oh. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. There's a tangent I won't go on. I decided to start announcing the tangents I don't go on, so you don't just think I only go on tangents. I avoid a lot, okay? There's a lot of self-control here. They begged him not to go into the abyss. Let me just summarize the abyss by simply saying this. When you read the scriptures, the abyss is described as the ultimate place of doom for the demonic. Okay? In scripture, it is described as the ultimate place of doom for the demonic, and the demons are up against Jesus. They have him outnumbered like 5,000 to 1. And yet they're the ones panicking, like, please just don't send us to the abyss. Don't send us to the abyss. Not yet. It seems like an unfair fight, but they're the ones asking for mercy. Jesus is outnumbered, but Jesus is not outmatched. Never forget the power of Jesus. Nothing and no one will ever outmatch him. Verse 32. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. Just think about that. Jesus shows up to the war, and they're like, "Don't send us in the abyss. In fact, can we go to the pigs?" And I'm like, "The pigs? Why pigs?" Like I wouldn't start my negotiation there. I'm like, "Jesus, it's obvious you're evicting us. Can we go to the Hilton? No. Motel 6? No. Okay, pigs." Right? Like that would be my last resort. Why pigs? And then this is the part that I hope is uncomfortable. And he gave them permission. I'm like, "You let them?" I want Jack Bauer Jesus. I want Jesus to be like, "I don't negotiate with terrorists. You can't have what you," right? I want him to just be like, "Get off my plane. I said out," right? That's what I expect. And yet Jesus is like, "Okay, you want the pigs? Go for it." I'm like, what? What is happening here? I have so many questions. You know what the fascinating thing is? Theologians are actually divided on what's happening here. Let me give you some comments and some things that we're sure of and where there's debate. The thing we're sure of is Jesus' name is powerful. The demons are shaking. The rest of it, unclear. Why did they request pigs? There's a few different thoughts. Let me just give you some of them, okay? Some people point out that it appears in scripture that sometimes the demonic actually have like turf and territory. And so some people have said, well, they're just trying to stay in their territory and they're not allowed to say this guy. They see some pigs, they're like, well, we'll go there. Other people have pointed out it appears that, the demonic always need a host. They're kind of like parasites. Luke 11, it talks about that a little bit. So some people are like, they're just like, they need something living to go into. That's why they spread their disease. So they're just looking for anything that's living. And so they pick the thing that's closest. Some people, they say, no, the reason the pigs is that this is Jesus, judging them. This is God's judgment because, the Jews weren't supposed to have pork and these people have pork. And so Jesus is like, yeah, we're going to this is like Jesus's version of prohibition. Instead of women with baseball bats smashing liquor bottles, this is Jesus like, I'm going to destroy a whole day's worth of Costco bacon for you. Ha. That's some people's opinion. One author says, and I think this is fascinating, but again, I wouldn't bet my life on it. He says, this is Jesus showing us the removal of evil is always costly. The townspeople lost their business, but they saved one of their children. I don't know. Ultimately, why pigs? I don't know. Sometimes I think, though, we're trying to answer the questions that the author, Luke, is not trying to answer, and that's why we can debate and we can talk, and I think it's helpful to kind of wrestle through some of those things, and it digs us deeper, and the curiosity always draws us closer to Jesus, but there's something else I think Luke is trying to point out from Jesus, and I just don't know that figuring out the pig thing is the thing. Okay, then why jump in the lake? What's going on there? Well, did the pigs do that like under their own control when the demons hit them? Is it kind of like someone in a burning building and they just decide to jump out because it's better than, burning alive? It's like, you know what? We'd rather just drown than have these demons on us. Is that what's happening? Or is it the demons that are like, no, like we're just going to destroy this entire, business of these people because demons destroy. That's what they're in the business of doing. They're murderers. And so they actually took control of the pigs and led them to the water. Is that what's happening? Is this like just like the demons are like, we know we're gonna, die. It's like a warplane that got shot down. And so as it's going down, it kind of aims for the munitions factory, try and do as much damage as possible on the way out. Like, is that what's happening? Again, not sure. But I'm convinced we can still take something away from this because whether out of fear and the pig's choice or the demons in control, don't miss this. All of that demonic chaos was packed into an oppressing one individual. Does that not give you compassion for the weight and the pain and the sorrow that he was going through? Does that not make you realize that, makes me realize like I've never experienced that amount of oppression and that amount of pain? Does it not leave you in a place of empathy to realize that some people have it so much harder than other people? And pay attention to where the man ends up. After he's freed, he doesn't run to his parents. We don't know if they're alive or not, or if they've disassociated from him. He doesn't run to any townspeople. It's like, I'm back, hey, remember me? He runs to the feet of Jesus. Maybe the only person who understands the kind of pain that he has gone through. As my wife says to me all the time, Mark, we have a trauma-informed God. That Jesus knows what pain and suffering and oppression is. Jesus has faced off with the devil. We covered that a few months ago. Jesus was all alone, isolated, and with the devil. Jesus knows what it's like. Jesus, not too long from now in this story, will actually be stripped naked and lynched in front of crowds. That maybe the only person who can identify with that shame and embarrassment and pain. We have a trauma-informed God. And when someone who's been hurt in a way that nobody else in town can say, I get that. I know what you've been through. It's like, no, you don't. No, you've never had a legion of demons inside of you. You've never lived in the tombs naked. You have no idea. The one person that this man finds comfort at his feet is Jesus. I love that. Like, that's amazing to me. Like, that gives me hope. Like when I meet people, I'm like, I have no idea how to even start to understand the pain that you've been through. It makes me so glad to know that I have a God who didn't stay up in heaven, but came to earth and experienced the pain and the trauma that this world has. We have a trauma-informed God, friends. And then whether the pigs were driven there or they were running away, as one author pointed out, if it is the demons that fled to the sea to get away from Jesus, the joke's on them, because Jesus just showed his authority stretches to the depths of the sea as well when he calmed the storm. There's nothing and nowhere that you can go to get out of the reach of Jesus. But again, why pigs and why you run off a cliff? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure it's the emphasis of this story, so let's keep going. When those tending the pigs saw what happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. Again, why are they scared? And there's division again. There's so many brilliant theologians who are like, it's probably this, it could be this, maybe it's this. Like there's a whole bunch of different reasons. Is it that Jesus was a small business killer and they're really upset that he just ruined their pork business? Is it that their town just lacked early adopters and they'll come around eventually? Is it that they didn't like that there was a cost to life change? And if this man could have just stayed out in the tombs and they could have kept things as it was? Is it because it's going to be too awkward to try and rebuild the relationship with the person that you tried to chain up and control and keep under guard? And now that they're back and healthy, and you're like, we don't know why they're scared. It's unclear. But it is interesting to me, and it's not lost, the irony that the demons and the townspeople want to get as far away from Jesus as possible. That's fascinating to me. So Jesus got into the boat and left. This is one of the things I love about Jesus. Jesus doesn't say where he's unwelcome. He will not force himself on anyone. Some of you, that wasn't your experience with the religious people. It was a constant forcing on, and no, you need, and Jesus is just like, I'm not welcome here, I get it. And he left. And then the man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him. I love it. It's like the demons are begging Jesus for their future place. They just want to get away from Jesus. The townspeople are begging Jesus to leave. And the man who had 5,000 demons inside of him is cured. And he's like, Jesus, please, please, please don't leave me here. Please, I don't even know where you're going. Notice Jesus doesn't say, hey, where are you going? Oh, that sounds nice. I'll come. He's just like, just take me with you. I don't even know where you're going, but I just want to be with you. And you expect Jesus, let's just be honest. I always tell you, read your Bible curiously. When I enter into the story and I just pretend I don't know the ending, I expect Jesus to be like, of course, hop in. But it's like Jesus is already in the boat and I just kind of picture him paddling, nope. It's just like, what? The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. At first, it's a little shocking, and then it's incredibly exciting. First of all, I assume it must have been easy for this man, and it says that he did kind of go out and then start telling people the amazing life change he experienced. I imagine it was easy to break the ice. I imagine all you had to do is this man was walk into the market, and people would walk up to you and be like, you look familiar, but I can't place you. And it's like, I'm wearing clothes now, right? It's just like, oh my goodness, yes, it's you. What happened? No chains, no guard, no tombs, you're dressed. What happened? It's just like Jesus happened, right? I imagine it was easy, but it's also exciting. Because at first when I'm like, why didn't you just let him come with you, Jesus? Jesus freed him to be fully human. Because let's just be honest. Isn't there something that is just core of the essence of being human that is to stand in the awe of greatness? That's why I believe we worship God, but I believe it's so much, you see the fingerprints of this everywhere. You see it at a Leaf game. You see it at the slam dunk competition when you see another human being jump over another human being and dunk it, and you're just telling everybody, you just have to go back and watch it on YouTube. There's something about, as humans, we are meant to stand in awe of greatness and share greatness with other people. Like when we see something amazing, I went to the Grand Canyon once and I just stood there and I'm like, the photos did not do this justice. Like, this is amazing. And you come home and you're showing people the pictures. And you're like, it's so much better. Like, I can't tell you, it's amazing. There is something about humans that when we experience something good, taste this, it tastes so good. When we experience greatness, we just have to worship it. We just have to acknowledge how great it is. Worship just means to give it worth and value. You can be an atheist and believe that there is something in humans that just has to stand and give praise to greatness. And Jesus just frees them to do that. And you know what's fascinating is he doesn't like say, okay, well, I need you to be my disciple for a few years so you can be trained in how to share your faith with other people. Jesus is like, just go tell people what God's done for you. And I love that because it's like when I went to the Grand Canyon, when I was leaving the state, I didn't have this visitor section where they're like, oh, you have to come and watch this 1 hour video so that you know how to share the Grand Canyon with your friends. And here's a diagram you can draw whenever you're trying to tell them how amazing the Grand Canyon is. It's just like, nope, no need. I will tell them. It's awesome. I've told countless people how amazing the Grand Canyon is. You just got to go. I've experienced it. Now you need to experience it. And that's what Jesus invites us into. He's like, just tell people what you've experienced. Just tell them your story. You had 5,000 demons, now you're free. Tell them what God has done for you. And he went all over town and told them, and the translation loses some of the impact. That's the problem with languages. But he didn't just tell people all over town, he carusoed them, which means he proclaimed it. Like he just couldn't keep it in. He's just declaring it. Like, I just need to tell you what Jesus did. He went all over town and told them how much Jesus had done. Jesus tells them, tell them what God has done in your life. And he's like, yep, the best way I can do that is to tell them about Jesus. Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. When you want to tell people what God is like, you point them to Jesus. I love it. I love it. So to end, a lot going on here. Some question marks. Why pigs? Why the lake? I don't know. I want to just give us some time to just sit and reflect on what Jesus is trying to say to us in this text. What is Jesus revealing about what God is like to you right now that you need to take note of? And so if you have a phone or a notepad, I always say write it down or lose it forever. Widliff. Something really helpful, but just taking a moment and saying, okay, Jesus, what is it that you're inviting me to take note of in this story, and how are you inviting me to respond? Because with Jesus, there's always a response. It's not like, oh, that's nice, and that's good information. There's a response needed. For some of you, you kind of checked out at the isolation point, and you're just like sitting with that, and you're like, I'm isolated. I'm isolated. Isn't it wild when you think about spiritual warfare? You have all these different things that come to mind. Who knew that setting up a coffee date could be one of the strongest moves in a spiritual battle of oppression? That some of you need to pull out your phone right now and message a friend. Some of you need to show up at guest services and just say, I don't even know where to start to find some good community. Can you help me get into a group, or help me find a team to serve, or give me more information about self-recovery? Some of you just need to decide today, like, no more isolation. Like this, the devil started that and I'm ending it. I'm gonna fight back and I'm gonna reach out to somebody. Set up a coffee date, set up a Zoom call. Maybe it's just fighting back the enemy in that way. Number 2, maybe it's prayer. Kind of goes in the same line of breaking isolation, but I know for so many of you, going up to the front, in fact, I'll just be honest, for all the years that I wasn't a pastor, I never went for prayer. Never. My church offered it every week and I never went. There's just something daunting. Like, well, what do you do? What do you say? Listen, if this is an easy on-ramp to go in for prayer, you can literally just be just pray for me. Our prayer teams will take it from there. They're up at the front. Daniel will be down there, downtown, ready to pray for you. And if all you say is, just pray for me. You don't have to give them your name if you're not ready. Or if you want to share more, you can. But maybe just inviting someone else, inviting community to carry the weight of some of the things that you've been carrying, and to commune with God on your behalf. What an amazing gift. I think of times in my life when I've, sat next to people in palliative care or known people who have. There's something so incredibly loving about someone who just sits there and is able to communicate for someone who can't communicate for themselves because they're just suffering so much. Let our prayer teams be that for you. Let them talk to God when you don't even feel like you know what words to use. We would love to pray for you. Number 3, share your story with people. Share your story of what God has done for you. Some of you are so paralyzed, you have a fear of saying the wrong thing. You went to all the courses about how to share your faith, and I'm like, I don't remember, is it point 3 or point 4 in the diagram? I always get to the end of the napkin and I don't have room for the other part, and you're just like, I'm gonna say something wrong, and they're gonna ask a question, I'm not gonna have the answer, and I fear I won't win. They'll come back at me and I won't have the answer and I won't know what to do. Friends, God in the flesh, Jesus, shows up in a new town and they ask him to leave. Your responsibility is not to convince anybody. What Jesus asked is just tell your story. Just tell what God has done. Take the pressure off, not to say any of those things are invaluable. I think it's amazing. But sometimes I think it's just so much simpler. Just tell people what God's done for you. And lastly, there's a word in this passage that I just get so excited about. It says the man was cured. If you go back to that verse, circle it, highlight it, underline it. A couple weeks ago, I told you there's this word in the original language called sozo. And we translate it at different times in different ways: to heal, to redeem, to cure, to save. Whenever you see save in scripture, it's sozo. It's the same word. And that's such good news. If you're here today, you're not a church person, not a Christian, or maybe you kind of gave up on faith. Maybe you have this idea that Jesus is like the secretary of afterlife affairs. It's like if you're engaging with Jesus, it's because you're trying to figure out the eternal destiny and your travel plans. But Jesus in this moment sozos someone. He cures them, he heals them, he saves them. And it's not just about the eternal destination. And believe me, we believe in eternity. We believe that our God is so loving, he doesn't just meet us in this world, but he offers to live with us forever. But why I love that word in the middle of a story where a person who's oppressed by 5,000 demons is sozoed is because it means that Jesus actually cares about your now. And some of you haven't been able to ever engage with the concept of eternity because you're like, I'm just so oppressed now. I have so much going on in my life. I don't know what's up and down. I'm so lost. I'm so confused. I'm so disoriented. I don't even know what's true. I just Jesus wants to step into the moment now. He wants to be with you now. He promised to send his spirit to live in you now. That man knew that. That's why he went to Jesus' feet. He wasn't just figuring out his travel plans for eternity. He wanted to begin that relationship now. And some of you, today is maybe the day where you actually begin to explore that. That Jesus is not just part of a buffet line of good ideas and you borrow from this person and that person and this guru and this book. But Jesus is more than just a wise teacher. He's the creator of the universe. And he's come in the flesh on earth to sozo, to save us now. And some of you, discovering or exploring that relationship is where you're at now. If that's where you're at, the fourth thing is I'd just love to invite you to talk to someone. Daniel is downtown. Robin's our online pastor today. You can reach out and have a conversation with her. I'll be up here at the front after the service. But can you just take a moment and just see of those 4 options or maybe something else, what is the Spirit prompting you towards? Just be still for a moment and then write it down. At this point, I'll invite our prayer teams to come forward. Daniel's gonna be coming up to the front to close up at downtown, and I'll be here, but can you just stand? I just wanna bless you as you go. As you wrote down, whatever you wrote down is your next step. We sang this song, Tell the Devil Not Today. Whatever you sense God leading you to, when you enact that, you are screaming at the top of your lungs, not today. You are welcoming the Jesus who could face off with 5,000 demons and win into your life for another moment. Have a fantastic week, Lakeside. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, friends.